Jiyu Nanfeng broke up with me in a very dignified manner on the day of his engagement to a wealthy socialite. He specifically chose the time my flight to Paris was scheduled to depart. He called it not wasting anyone's time. From the taxi to the boarding gate, my phone wouldn't stop ringing with calls from friends. They were all fuming, calling Jiyu Nanfeng a scoundrel and telling me that if I felt wronged, I should go back and crash the party immediately, but they didn't know that 10 minutes before boarding, I took a call. The person on the other end was the sole heir to the richest man in the capital. Throughout our 4 years of university, he had pursued me for 3, and I had rejected him for 3. The last time he asked if I would consider him, I told him, Jiyu Nanfeng is going to marry me. That was the stupidest thing I've ever said. Now, at Beijing Capital International Airport Terminal 3, standing right in front of the assistant Jiyu Nanfeng had planted to monitor me, I dialed that number. Fu Shizhou, I accept what you proposed back then. I want to marry you within half a month. He fell silent for 3 seconds. Shen Musi, have you thought this through? I looked at the live stream on my phone of Jiyu Nanfeng sliding a ring onto Bai Jiqing's finger and smiled. I've thought it through very clearly. I only have one condition. I want the entire city to know about this wedding. Capital International Airport Terminal 3 First Class Lounge. I sat by the window with an untouched cup of coffee. In front of me, my phone screen was blindingly bright, with WeChat notifications popping up one after another. Jiyu Nanfeng's assistant Zhao Yuan sent a link with a message, MS Shun Mr. Jiyu says this is the electronic version of his engagement invitation for your review. He said he's sorry, but you two just aren't a match. I didn't click the link because the large TV screen in the lounge was already broadcasting a special financial news report. Maple Group CEO Jiyu Nanfeng and Bai Real Estate heiress Bai Jiqing engaged today, a powerful alliance between two of the capital's elite families. On the screen, Jiyu Nanfeng wore a perfectly tailored navy blue suit, smiling with the grace of a polished gentleman. The woman beside him, dressed in a champagne-colored gown, held his arm and smiled elegantly at the camera. I knew that smile all too well. At the company's annual gala 3 years ago, Jiyu Nanfeng told me that such occasions required a presentable female companion, making me change through 3 different gowns before he was satisfied. Back then he said, Musi, you're a researcher, you're not good at these social events, I'll handle the arrangements. The result of his arrangements was that he found someone who was better at it. My phone began to vibrate violently. My college roommate Lin Wei was the first to call. Musi, did you see the news? That bastard Jiyu Nanfeng. I saw it, I replied calmly. Where are you? The airport, getting ready to fly to Paris. Silence followed for 3 seconds, then a scream. You're still going to study, he's engaged, and you're not coming back to tear him apart. Tear him apart. I took a sip of my coffee, frowning at the bitterness. A waste of airfare. The second call was from my lab colleague Sister Ju. Xiaoshen, don't do anything rash, we're all behind you. If you want to come back, I'll help you request leave from the institute. No need, I haven't finished my credits yet. But you're just letting it go like this. I glanced at the TV screen showing a close-up of Jiyu Nanfeng putting the ring on Bai Jiqing's finger. The diamond was massive, its facets dazzling under the lights. That was the style I had set my eyes on at a jewelry exhibition last year. I had sent a photo to Jiyu Nanfeng saying this is beautiful. He replied, we'll talk about it after you finish your PhD. It turns out talk about it meant buying it for someone else. Sister Ju, I board in 10 minutes, let's talk later. After hanging up, another WeChat message popped up. This time it was from Jiyu Nanfeng himself, just one sentence. Musi, let's have a clean break. I'll have someone pack your things and send them to your parents' house. Don't make a scene, it's not good for anyone. Don't make a scene. I stared at those words for 5 seconds. 7 years. I gave up offers from prestigious overseas universities to stay in the country. I used my project bonuses to help him through the financial crises of his early startup days. When his mother was critically ill, I spent 3 months running between the hospital and the office. He said, Musi, I'll marry you once I have a firm footing. And all I got was don't make a scene. Zhao Yuan's message came again. MS Shin Mr. Jiyu said he will handle your luggage. Please do not contact him again after you arrive in Paris. MS. Bai is not very happy about it. I typed back. Tell Jiyu Nanfeng I won't be keeping his things either. Also congratulate him for me. He found someone who's easy to fool. After sending that, I closed every chat window related to Jiyu Nanfeng in my contacts. There was a number I hadn't dialed in 3 years. The contact name was Fu Shizhou, do not answer. He had pursued me for all 4 years of university, from bringing me water during freshman military training to holding a bouquet of red roses for a public confession at graduation. Every time, my reason for rejection was the same: I have a boyfriend. The last time, he stood under my faculty building, soaked to the bone by a rainstorm, yet his voice remained clear. Shinmusi, if you ever change your mind, call me no matter where I am. I'll wait for you until I'm 30. At the time, I thought he was ridiculous. Now, I think I'm the ridiculous one. I checked the time, 8 minutes until boarding. I pressed the call button. It rang twice before he picked up. Shinmusi. Fu Shizhou's voice was slightly raspy. The background was quiet, as if he had just been woken up. It's me. How are you? I accept what you proposed back then. I interrupted him. I want to marry you within half a month. The silence on the other end felt like a century. Then he said, Shinmusi, have you thought this through? I looked up on the TV screen. Jiyu Nanfeng was kissing Bai Jiqing's forehead while the guests cheered and applauded. I've thought it through very clearly. I only have one condition. I want the entire city to know about this wedding. Fu Shizhou let out a chuckle. It wasn't mocking, it was the kind of laugh tinged with a bit of helplessness. Where are you? Capital. Airport T3, flying to Paris now. Call me when you land. I'll arrange for someone to pick you up. Fu Shizhou. I paused. Aren't you going to ask me why? No need to ask. His voice was steady. I've waited 3 years for this call, Shinmusi. I don't care why, I just want you. The boarding announcement rang out. I picked up my bag and took one last look at Jiyu Nanfeng on the TV screen. He probably thinks that by shipping me off to the other side of the world, this matter has ended dignifiedly. What he doesn't know is that I have all the material testing reports for Maple Group's new hotel project. In that report, to save 30 million in costs, he used substandard aerospace-grade aluminum alloy instead of construction-grade steel. This project is the first major collaboration with Bai Real Estate, and I am the top aerospace materials engineer in the country. Every step I've taken counts. The first-class cabin of the Airbus A380 was quiet. The neighbor next to me was an elderly Frenchman who had already fallen asleep. Before I turned off my phone, WeChat had already exploded. My university groups, research institute groups, and even my mother had sent messages. Lin Wei sent 17 voice notes in a row, the last one being, Shinmusi, are you even looking at the news? I didn't listen to them and simply shut down the phone as the plane took off. I closed my eyes and went over everything I needed to do in the next 2 weeks. The lab in Paris was already set up. My supervisor is a titan in the industry, and the research topic I applied for involves new aerospace titanium alloys with a project budget of 3 million euros. Normally, I should pour all my energy into research and return in 3 years with a PhD. By then, I might not even remember who Jiyu Nanfeng is. But I don't plan on waiting 3 years. A flight attendant brought champagne, and I took a sip. Although my phone was off, I found myself clicking on the news channel on the seat's entertainment system. A replay, still Jiyu Nanfeng's engagement banquet. The screen cut to the interview segment. A reporter asked, Mr. Jiyu, we heard you had a long-term girlfriend before. Is she aware of today's engagement? Jiyu Nanfeng's expression management was textbook perfect. Ms. Shun and I have parted ways amicably and wish each other the best. She is flying to Paris today for further studies, and I sincerely wish her well. Wish each other the best. I nearly spat out my champagne. What a wonderful way to wish each other the best. Even though I couldn't see Zhao Yuan's messages, I knew with my eyes closed that he must be spreading the version that Shinmusi stepped down voluntarily. Jiyu Nanfeng always did things flawlessly, ensuring he remained the good guy even in a breakup. Once the plane leveled off, I opened my laptop and connected to the in-flight Wi-Fi. A new email was sitting in my inbox. The sender was Fu Shizhou's private assistant, with the subject line, Draft Prenuptial Agreement for your review. I opened it and read it 3 times from beginning to end. The agreement was very straightforward. 50% of the personal assets under Fu Shizhou's name would belong to the wife, with an additional 10% family trust share added annually after marriage. The wife would not be required to sign any waiver regarding premarital property. There was only one additional clause: during the marriage, neither party shall damage the other's reputation in any form. No traps, no strings attached, not even a what happens if we divorce restrictive clause. It didn't look like a prenup, it looked like a gift contract. While I was staring blankly at the screen, my phone rang. The in-flight Wi-Fi signal wasn't great, But the WeChat call persisted, a random number located in Beijing. I answered. Hello Ms. Shen, I am Mr. Fu's assistant Song Yi. Mr. Fu asked me to confirm the terms of the agreement with you. If any changes are needed, I can adjust them immediately. I've read it. I paused. This agreement isn't very fair to him. Song Yi's voice was professional. Mr. Fu said this is what he ought to give. Additionally, Mr. Fu asked me to tell you, he said you aren't the type to take advantage of people, so the wording of the agreement doesn't really matter. I was silent for 2 seconds. The second clause regarding the family trust, change it to 5%. Ms. Shun. Mr. Fu said, tell him I don't want his family trust, I want something else. Please go ahead. Which supplier is providing the construction steel for the new hotel project between Maple Group and Buys Real Estate? Song Yi paused for a moment, followed by the rapid clacking of a keyboard. One moment. Found it. It's Dingxing Metals. Check the relationship between the legal representative of Dingxing Metals and Jiyu Nanfeng. This time, the silence lasted longer. Ms. Shen, the legal representative of Dingxing Metals, is a man named Zhao Yuan. Zhao Yuan, Jiyu Nanfeng's assistant, the same man who had just warned me on WeChat to stop making a scene. I smiled. Assistant Song, book a meeting with Fu Shizhou for tomorrow morning. I want to discuss an acquisition proposal with him. Understood. Also, Mr. Fu said. Said what? He said, don't focus entirely on work. The lobster on the plane is quite good. Remember to eat. I hung up and stared out at the pitch-black night sky at 30,000 feet. I signed an agreement that would change my fate. Not for love, but because I needed a battlefield. And Fu Shizhou had given me the ultimate weapon. The plane touched down in Paris at 6:00 a.m. local time. The moment I turned on my phone, WeChat messages flooded in like a tidal wave. One was from Jiyu Nanfeng, sent 2 hours prior. Shen Musi, did you say something to the media? The Bai family just called to ask about you. I didn't reply. 5 minutes later, a second message arrived. I'm warning you, don't escalate this. The Bai family is not someone you can afford to provoke. I typed back. Jiyu Nanfeng, the day of your engagement is the day I fly to Paris. You chose this timing on purpose, didn't you? Read. No reply. It took a full 3 minutes before he sent. What are you trying to say? I'm saying, thank you for picking such a wonderful day. The weather in Paris is lovely today. After sending that, I blocked him immediately. As I walked out of the arrivals hall pulling my suitcase, a young man in a black suit stood at the VIP exit holding a sign with my name on it. Ms. Shen Musi. He bowed slightly. I was sent by Mr. Fu. The car is outside and Mr. Fu is waiting for you. Waiting for me. I frowned. Isn't he in Beijing? The young man smiled. Mr. Fu flew in last night. He said he couldn't let you arrive in Paris alone. I followed him out of the terminal. On the helipad, a helicopter was waiting, its rotors already beginning to spin. Mr. Fu mentioned that Paris traffic can be quite bad. This will be faster. I looked back at the terminal behind me. Jiyu Nanfeng probably thought that sending me off to Paris was the end of the story. He had no idea it wasn't even the prologue. The helicopter landed on the rooftop helipad of the Shangri-La Hotel Paris. As I stepped off the aircraft in my high heels, the Paris wind felt biting. The Seine wound its way beneath us, and the Eiffel Tower in the distance was glowing with golden lights. Fu Shizhou stood by the edge of the helipad, dressed in a dark grey overcoat, hands tucked into his pockets. I hadn't seen him in 3 years. He was a bit leaner now, his jawline sharper than before. In university he had been the clean-cut, refreshing type, but now he carried a cold, imposing aura, the kind expected of the heir to the country's wealthiest man. He watched me approach but didn't speak. I spoke first. You've lost weight. You too. He scanned me briefly. Does Jiyu Nanfeng not feed you? I froze for a second, then burst out laughing. This was likely the most bizarre reunion in the world, the day I was dumped by my ex. I landed in Paris on a helicopter provided by my former pursuer, and his first words were a jab at my ex-boyfriend. Let's go, he said, turning around. The hotel has breakfast ready. We'll talk after you've eaten. We took the elevator down. It was just the two of us. His profile was reflected in the mirrored walls. He was looking at me, his gaze completely unshielded. Fu Shizhou, can you stop staring at me like that? No, he replied matter-of-factly. I haven't seen you in 3 years. What's wrong with looking a bit longer? When the elevator reached the presidential suite floor, the doors opened to reveal another person standing in the hallway, Zhao Yuan, Jiyu Nanfeng's assistant. He was wearing a slightly ill-fitting suit and holding a suitcase. The moment he saw me, his expression looked as if he'd Swallowed a fly, MS Shin. Zhao Yuan stammered. What are you doing here? I glanced at Fu Shizhou. He raised an eyebrow wearing an expression that said, handle it yourself, Assistant Zhao, I said calmly, walking toward him. Why are you in Paris? Zhao Yuan's expression was a masterpiece of discomfort. Looking like a thief caught red-handed, he stammered, Mr. Jiu sent me to Paris to handle some matters and, to confirm you arrived safely. Confirm I arrived safely, I repeated, or to confirm if I've made a scene. Zhao Yuan's face turned bright red. MS Shin, you've misunderstood. Mr. Jiu is concerned about you. Concerned? I pulled out my phone, opened Jiu Nanfeng's I'm warning you message and held the screen up to his face. Does this look like concern? Zhao Yuan took one look, and sweat began to bead on his forehead. Fu Shizhou leaned against the hallway wall, arms crossed. His voice wasn't loud, but it was crystal clear. And who is this? Jiu Nanfeng's assistant. I answered for him. He flew all the way from Beijing just to check if I was crying in Paris. Zhao Yuan's face went deathly pale. MS Shin, please don't say that, Mr. Jiu. Really, Assistant Zhao, Fu Shizhou interrupted, his tone slow and deliberate. On the very day of your boss's engagement, he sends you to stalk his ex-girlfriend. That's not exactly a classy move, is it? Zhao Yuan opened his mouth but couldn't find any words. Fu Shizhou pulled his phone from his pocket, dialed a number and hit the speakerphone. The phone rang twice. Before it was picked up, on the other end was Jiu Nanfeng's voice, carrying his usual refined elegance. President Fu, calling so late, is there something I can help with? Mr. Jiu. Fu Shizhou's tone was as casual as if he were discussing the weather. Your man is currently standing in the hallway of the Shangri-La Paris, blocking my fiancé. Were you aware of this? There was a dead silence on the other end for 5 whole seconds. Then Jiu Nanfeng's voice shifted. The elegance was gone, replaced by a low, suppressed anger. Fiancé, that's right. Fu Shizhou looked at me. Shenmusi, my fiancé, we're getting married in 2 weeks. Fu Shizhou, what kind of joke is this? I'm not joking. Fu Shizhou cut him off. By the way, your assistant Zhao Yuan is standing right in front of me. If you have anything you want to say to Shenmusi, say it now, I'm listening. A long silence followed. Finally, Jiu Nanfeng spoke. Put Shenmusi on the phone. Fu Shizhou handed the phone to me. I took it but said nothing. Shenmusi. Jiu Nanfeng's voice was cold. Are you doing this just to spite me? To spite you? I laughed. Jiu Nanfeng, I found out about your engagement from the news. You chose my flight to Paris as the day for your engagement because you wanted me to disappear quietly, didn't you? Well, I've disappeared quietly, yet you still sent an assistant to stalk me. What exactly do you want? I didn't. What you want is for me to disappear quietly but not too quickly, or people will say you bullied me. You want me to bow out gracefully but not too gracefully, or people will say you failed me. Jiu Nanfeng, what exactly do you want from me? Silence on the other end. You don't need to say anything else, I said calmly. Please have your assistant leave. Also, congratulations on your engagement. The ring is quite beautiful. I hung up and handed the phone back to Fu Shizhou. Zhao Yuan stood frozen like a wooden post. Assistant Zhao. Fu Shizhou patted him on the shoulder. Is your flight reimbursed? If not, I can book a ticket back for you. Zhao Yuan grabbed his suitcase and fled in a panic. Silence returned to the hallway. Fu Shizhou looked at me, his gaze serious. Shenmusi, what you said just now, which part? You asked him what he wanted from you. He paused. Have you thought about what you want? I looked at the floor-to-ceiling window at the end of the hall. Outside, the Parisian night was a brilliant display of lights. I want him to regret it. Fu Shizhou was silent for 2 seconds. Fine, he nodded, then I'll help you. He pushed open the suite doors. Breakfast was already set up inside. A long table with a white cloth was adorned with fresh flowers and champagne, with the Eiffel Tower framed perfectly in the window. Eat first, he said, pulling out a chair. We can talk about your plan after. I sat down and looked at the exquisite French breakfast. Suddenly, I realized I was ravenous. Fu Shizhou, I said, taking a bite of a croissant. Aren't you afraid I'm just using you? He sat opposite me, holding a coffee cup. He looked up at my words. Using me? He let out a short laugh. Shenmusi, I chased you for 3 years and you refused to even look at me. Now that you're finally willing to use me, I couldn't be happier. You are something else. Besides, he put down his cup, his expression turning earnest. You think I can't tell? You aren't the type to marry just anyone for revenge. You came to me because you need a platform and I just happen to have the one you need. I looked at him, truly observing him for the first time. In university, I only remembered his persistence, But I'd never noticed his eyes, they were bright, as if they could see through any facade. The new hotel project for Maple Group, I said, putting down the croissant. They used substandard construction materials. I have the inspection reports for the steel supplied by Dingsheng Metals. Once this report goes public, Maple Group won't just face massive fines, they'll be blacklisted from all commercial real estate bidding. Fu Shizhou's expression didn't change, but his eyes sharpened. What's your move? The partnership between Bai's Real Estate and Maple Group is built on this hotel project. If the project fails, the Bai family will be the first to pull their investment to cut their losses. To stabilize the Bais, Jiyu Nanfeng will definitely embezzle funds from other Maple Group projects to fill the hole. I took a sip of champagne. That is when he will be at his most vulnerable. Fu Shizhou leaned back in his chair, a slow smirk forming on his lips. So you don't need my money, he said. You need someone to help you scoop up the minority shares of Maple Group. Smart. I set my glass down. Once I have enough shares, I'll call for a shareholders meeting in my capacity as a stakeholder. At that point, that inspection report will be the final straw that breaks him. How much do you have now? Jiyu Nanfeng gave me 5% previously as compensation. He thought such a small amount wouldn't be enough to make waves. Fu Shizhou did the math. Combined with the minority shares I can acquire, we can get to about 18%, but Jiyu Nanfeng holds 35%, and the Bai family has 12%. You're still short. The Bai family's 12% will become a liability the moment the project crashes. I smiled. Bai Jiqing is marrying Jiyu Nanfeng for the Maple Group business empire. If that empire crumbles, the Bais will run faster than anyone. Fu Shizhou looked at me with a mix of admiration and something else. Shenmusi, he asked, how long have you been planning this? I blinked, momentarily stunned. It's been about 3 months. I confessed honestly, since I found that inspection report. So you knew 3 months ago that he was getting engaged to Bai Jiqing? I wasn't certain, but I had a hunch. I lowered my head, staring at the golden champagne in my glass. Over the last 6 months he became increasingly dismissive. He went on more business trips and started stepping away to take phone calls. I'm not an idiot. Fu Shizhou fell silent for a long time, then he stood up, walked around the table and crouched down in front of me, looking up into my eyes. Shenmusi, I'm helping you with this, not because I want to watch you get revenge on someone. Then why? Because you shouldn't have to endure this kind of injustice. His voice was soft. 7 years of devotion, he doesn't deserve it. I turned my head away, not letting him see my expression. Outside the window, the lights of the Eiffel Tower shimmered in the night. Paris was beautiful, and what I was about to do was only just beginning. Inside the presidential suite of the Shangri-La Hotel, Fu Shizhou and I sat opposite each other. A laptop and a thick stack of documents were spread across the coffee table between us. He had just finished his 3rd phone call, having spoken to his fund managers in Hong Kong, Singapore, and London. The order was singular: starting from the market opening tomorrow, aggressively buy up all outstanding shares of the Maple Group, no price limit. Are you sure about this? I asked. Are you questioning my execution? He arched an eyebrow. I'm questioning your cost control. I pointed to the stock price on the screen. Maple Group is trading at 28 HKD. If you force the price up like this, your acquisition cost will be at least a 30% premium. So what? He leaned back on the sofa, crossing his legs. I can afford it. Fu Shizhou, I'm being serious. So am I. He sat up straight, hands folded over his knees. Shenmusi, have you realized something yet? What? You are currently my fiancé. It is only natural for me to spend my own money to help my fiancé vent her frustrations. I stared at him for 3 seconds before pulling a sheet of paper from the files and handing it over. What's this? The material inspection report for Maple Group's new hotel project. I pointed to the data. This column shows the actual tensile strength is 22% lower than the national standard. This one shows the yield strength is 18% too low. Do you know what that means? As Fu Shizhou scanned the report, his expression shifted. It means that in the event of an earthquake or extreme weather, the building's load-bearing structure will fail immediately. I said calmly, this isn't just cutting corners, it's murder. Is he insane? Fu Shizhou set the report down. He dared to fake a project of this scale. He's not insane, he just did the math. I flipped to another document. By using substandard materials, he saves 32 million on the entire project. That exact amount happens to be the cooperation earnest money demanded by Real Estate. Essentially a disguised dowry. Fu Shizhou was silent for a long time. So this report you're holding, he said, won't just make him lose money, it will put him in prison. Correct, I took the report back. But I don't plan on handing it to the regulators just yet. I want him to lose everything first, then he can go to jail. Why? Because if he goes in now, he'll just think he was unlucky. I looked into Fu Shizhou's eyes. I want him to know that every cent and every person he loses is because of his own choices. Fu Shizhou watched me for a long while, then smiled. Shenmusi, he said, back in university I pursued you because you were beautiful, but now I think the most beautiful thing about you is your ruthlessness. Thanks for the compliment. It's not a compliment, it's a statement of fact. He stood up and walked to the window, his back to me. But I have one condition. What is it? When you do these things, don't lose yourself in the process. He turned around. Revenge is fine, but you have a long road ahead of you. Your expertise is in aerospace materials, not vengeance. Once this is over, you need to get back to your research. I stunned for a moment. For 3 years, Jiyu Nanfeng had never said anything like that. He would only say, Musi, can you stop working so much overtime? Or Musi, hasn't that project bonus cleared yet? Or Musi, a girl shouldn't work such an exhausting job. Fu Shizhou said, you have a long road ahead of you. Okay, I nodded. I promise. Then it's a deal. He walked back and extended his hand. Pleasure doing business with you, fiancé. I shook his hand. Likewise. His hand was warm with thin calluses on the palm. My phone rang. It was Song Yi. President Fu, the acquisition plan has been sent to the fund managers. Also, there's movement from Jiyu Nanfeng. He just posted on his Moments. It's a photo from the engagement party with the caption, please guide me for the rest of our lives. Fu Shizhou glanced at me. He still doesn't know. I asked, know what? That I'm in Paris with you. Fu Shizhou thought for a moment, then took out his phone. He snapped a photo of the documents and the laptop on the coffee table, then another of the Eiffel Tower outside. He opened his Moments and posted 9 photos, the Paris nightscape, the suite layout, a corner of the documents, and a selfie of himself. The caption read, accompanying my fiancé to Paris for wedding dress fittings. She says the breakfast at the Shangri-La is quite good. Post. 3 seconds later, Song Yi called. Again, President Fu. Jiyu Nanfeng's call went straight to the chairman. Fu Shizhou didn't bat an eye. What did my father say? The chairman said, I don't interfere with Shizhou's affairs, ask him yourself. Then let him call me. No sooner had he spoken than Fu Shizhou's phone rang. The screen displayed Jiyu Nanfeng. Fu Shizhou hit the speakerphone. Fu Shizhou, what is the meaning of that post? Jiyu Nanfeng's voice was low, as if he was afraid of being overheard. Exactly what it says. Is Shenmusi with you? Yes. Since when did you two? That's not important. Fu Shizhou interrupted. What matters is that your ex-girlfriend is now my fiancé. President Jiyu, you should be congratulating me. The sound of something shattering came from the other end of the line. Then, Jiyu Nanfeng's voice turned icy. Fu Shizhou, do you have any idea what you're doing? Shenmusi is mine. Yours what? Fu Shizhou's voice suddenly dropped, turning heavy. Your backup plan, your stepping stone, or just a tool to be discarded when you're finished. You, Jiyu Nanfeng. On your engagement day, you specifically chose a flight time for her to Paris. You wanted her to be thousands of miles away while you married someone else, hoping she'd take the hint and disappear. Fu Shizhou spoke deliberately. Do you have any idea how long she waited at the airport that day? Do you know how many consolation calls she received? Do you know she sat alone in the departure lounge, watching you put a ring on another woman's finger on the TV? My hands clenched involuntarily. You don't. No, Fu Shizhou continued, because you didn't care. All you cared about was whether she would cause a scene. That's why you sent an assistant to Paris to tail her, just to make sure she vanished quietly. Fu Shizhou, this is between her and me. From now on it isn't. Fu Shizhou hung up. The room became so quiet you could hear the wind outside the window. The things you just said. I started. How did you know how long I waited at the airport? I guessed. He looked at me. But I guessed right, didn't I? I said nothing. Shenmusi. He walked over and stood before me. I didn't say those things to make you feel touched. I just want you to know, from now on, you don't have to carry the burden alone. I looked up at him. And don't feel pressured by me. He added, like I said, I've been waiting 3 years for this phone call. Whatever your reasons were for saying yes, I'll take it. Fu Shizhou, you are really annoying. He laughed, looking like a college student outside. Dawn was breaking. Daybreak in Paris was stunning, with orange-red light piercing through the clouds and reflecting off the Seine. A new day had begun, and Jiyu Nanfeng's nightmare had begun as well. 3 days later, I returned to Beijing. Fu Shizhou didn't come back with me. He said he had some private matters to handle in Paris, but before I left he gave me a black card and a key. The card is for your spending money and the key is for the wedding house. He pressed them into my hand. The apartment is near Financial Street. Close to your office. Stay there for now. If you don't like it, we'll change it. Fu Shizhou, I have a place to stay. That rental, he frowned. The one Jiyu Nanfeng rented for you. I shut my mouth. He was right. The apartment I'd lived in for 3 years was rented by Jiyu Nanfeng under his company's name. His assistant had already notified the landlord that they were terminating the lease last month. Fine, I took the key. Thank you. Don't thank me, he said, opening the car door for me. You're my fiancé. It's only right that you live in my house. I got in the car and he leaned down to look at me through the window. By the way, there's a business negotiation on Financial Street the day after tomorrow. Both Maple Group and Buy Real Estate will be there. Do you want to go? What negotiation? Buy Real Estate wants to invest in Maple Group's new energy project. Jiyu Nanfeng needs that money to plug the funding gap for the hotel project. Fu Shizhou's lips curled into a smirk. I've already spoken to the organizers. The new vice president of the Fu Group will be attending. Vice President me? Yes, he winked. Any objections? I don't have an MBA, you don't need to learn anything, you just need to sit there and let Jiyu Nanfeng see you, that's enough. I looked into his eyes and suddenly realized what he meant. You want to make him lose his cool. Smart. He straightened up. A hunter who panics is the one most likely to make a mistake. 2 days later, at the top floor conference room of the Fu Group headquarters on Financial Street, I was wearing a champagne-colored power suit with a low ponytail and a pair of pearl earrings, a meeting gift from Fu Shizhou's mother. Song Yi stood beside me, holding a thick stack of documents. President Shen, there are 3 parties at the negotiating table today: the Fu Group, Maple Leaf, and the Bai Group. Mr. Fu's instructions are that you don't need to speak proactively, just be present, but if you wish to say something, I know what to say. The conference room doors swung open and several people were already seated inside. At one end of the long table sat Bai Chongli, the chairman of Bai Real Estate. He was in his 60s with silver hair but sharp, piercing eyes. Beside him sat a young woman, Bai Jiqing, dressed in a Dior suit, her makeup flawless and her expression haughty. At the other end of the table sat Jiyu Nanfeng. He was in a charcoal grey suit with a dark red tie, looking just as refined and respectable as he did at the engagement party. But the moment he looked up and saw me walk in, his expression looked as if he'd been slapped across the face. Shen Musi, he blurted out. I didn't give him a glance. Walking straight to the Fu Group's designated seats and taking my place, Song Yi placed the documents in front of me and whispered, President Shen, here is today's agenda. Bai Chongli frowned. Where is Fu Shizhou? I was told he'd be attending in person. Mr. Fu had an urgent matter come up, I said, looking up and giving Bai Chongli a slight nod. I am representing the Fu Group today. Bai Jiqing stared at me, her gaze shifting from shock to scrutiny and then to a condescending appraisal. So you're Shen Musi, she spoke up, her voice sugary sweet, almost cloying. Nanfeng's ex-girlfriend. I corrected her. Once Mr. Jiyu got engaged, that became my only title. Jiyu Nanfeng's face turned grim. Bai Chongli remained expressionless, merely glancing at me before flipping open his folder. Since everyone is here, let's begin. The first half of the negotiation was purely formal. Bai Real Estate wanted the Fu Group to yield a portion of the equity in a new energy project. In exchange, the Fu Group demanded that the Bai Group withdraw its investment in the Maple Leaf Group's hotel project. Bai Chongli was no fool. He immediately caught the drift. The Fu Group doesn't want the Bai family collaborating with Maple Leaf. It's not that we don't want it, I said, opening the file in front of me. It's that we suggest Chairman Bai re-evaluates the risks of the Maple Leaf Hotel project. Jiyu Nanfeng's head snapped up. Shen Musi, you, Mr. Jiyu. I cut him off, my tone flat. I am speaking on behalf of the Fu Group today, not in a private capacity. Please watch your language. Bai Chongli looked intrigued. Miss Shen, when you say risk, what exactly are you referring to? I pulled a sheet from the folder and slid it to the center of the table. This is a summary of the material inspection report for the Maple Leaf Group's new hotel project. The tensile strength is 22% below the national standard. And the yield strength is 18% below. Once a building like this is in use, the safety hazards will be catastrophic. The room went so quiet you could hear the hum of the air conditioning. Bai Chongli picked up the paper, studied it for 3 seconds, and then slowly looked up at Jiyu Nanfeng. Nanfeng, what is the meaning of this? Jiyu Nanfeng went pale, but he regained his composure quickly. Uncle Bai, that report is a forgery. Shen Musi is doing this out of a personal vendetta. Mr. Jiyu, I interrupted again. This report is an official document issued by the National Construction Material Testing Center, and the serial number is verifiable. If you believe it's a forgery, you are more than welcome to request a formal review. I pulled the report back and looked at Bai Chongli. Chairman Bai, the Fu Group's recommendation is to suspend all cooperation until Bai Real Estate has reassessed the risks involved with the Maple Leaf project. Bai Chongli remained silent for a long time. Bai Jiqing couldn't help herself. Shen Musi, this is a blatant abuse of power for personal revenge. Just because Nanfeng dumped you, you're trying to sabotage his business. Miss Bai, I said, looking her in the eye, my voice steady. My breakup with Jiyu Nanfeng was his choice. He chose you and I wish you both the best. But business is business and personal matters are personal. I am sitting here because the Fu Group believes there is a major safety hazard in the Maple Leaf project. It's as simple as that. You, Jiqing, Jiyu. Nanfeng pressed his hand over hers, his voice low. That's enough. Bai Chongli set the paper down and looked at Jiyu Nanfeng. Nanfeng, I need an explanation. Jiyu Nanfeng took a deep breath. Uncle Bai, the material supplier for the hotel project is Dingxing Metals. Their credentials and inspection reports are all in order. I suspect the report in Shen Musi's hands it's the result of a national random inspection from 3 months ago. I finished for him. Dingxing Metals obtained A pass rating through bribery, but the samples tested were specially provided by them. The actual materials on the construction site match the data in this report. I pulled a USB drive from my bag and set it on the table. This contains all the email correspondence between Dingxing Metals and the site project manager, as well as the material procurement list signed by Zhao Yuan. Mr. Jiyu, would you like to take a look? Jiyu Nanfeng stared at the USB drive as if it were a venomous snake. Bai Chongli stood up. This negotiation is over for today. Nanfeng, I need you to provide me with a third-party inspection report for every single material used in that hotel project within 1 week. Uncle Bai, 1 week. Bai Chongli grabbed his coat and walked out without looking back. Bai Jiqing stood up, glared at me with pure venom, and chased after him in her high heels. Only Jiyu Nanfeng and I were left in the room. He sat in his chair, hands clenched into white-knuckled fists. Shen Musi, he said, his voice low and simmering like lava. What exactly are you trying to do? I stood up and packed away the USB drive. Jiyu Nanfeng, 3 months ago when you asked me to sign that 5% equity transfer agreement, you called it compensation. Do you remember what I told you then? He didn't speak. I said, Jiyu Nanfeng, you're going to regret this. I picked up my bag and headed for the door. Shen Musi. He stood up abruptly, his chair slamming against the wall with a loud bang. You think you've won just because you have Fu Shizhou backing you. The Bai family won't pull their investment just because of a few words from you. I stopped and looked back at him. Jiyu Nanfeng, have you ever considered one thing? What? The Bai family cares about profit, not sentiment. When your project becomes a black hole, how much do you think Bai Jiqing's love will be worth? I pushed the door open and walked out. Behind me, I heard the sound of a teacup shattering. Songyi was waiting in the hallway. President Shen, your performance just now. He hesitated. Speak. Jiyu Nanfeng's face turned absolutely green. I smiled for the first time. The sound of my heels clicking against the marble floor felt like music to my ears. That weekend was the Beijing Socialite Charity Gala. It was one of the most important events on the city's social calendar. Attended only by the top-tier elite. Fu Shizhou's mother, Zhu Minglan, was the co-chair of the gala and attended personally every year. I didn't want to go. My only thought on such occasions could be summed up in 3 words: waste of time. But Fu Shizhou called me from overseas. You have to go. Why? Because my mother wants to see you and, he paused, Bai Jiqing will be there. So this is your first appearance as the future daughter-in-law of the Fu family. Shen Musi, you need to let everyone know you aren't some poor little thing who ran off to Paris because she got dumped. I was silent for 3 seconds. What kind of person does your mother like? She likes smart people. He chuckled. You don't need to worry about that. My mother hates Jiyu Nanfeng even more than I do. Why? because when Ji Nanfeng was courting you back then, she looked into him, she thought he was too calculating and unreliable. She told me back then, Shizhou, that girl you like has terrible taste in men. Those were her exact words, verbatim. I hung up and looked at myself in the mirror for a long moment. The charity gala was held at the most expensive hotel in the city. The red carpet stretched from the entrance to the grand ballroom, flanked by swarms of reporters. I was wearing a black evening gown that Fu Shizhou had sent over from Paris Haute Couture, a one-of-a-kind piece. Around my neck was an emerald necklace sent by Zhu Minglan, accompanied by a card, "Wear this, and everyone will know you belong to the Fu family." I took a deep breath and stepped out of the car. The flashes from the cameras were blinding. The reporters had clearly been tipped off. Questions hit me like cannonballs. "Miss Shen, what is your relationship with Fu Shizhou? Is it true that you two are getting engaged soon? CEO Jiu Nanfeng is also here today. Will you be greeting him?" I didn't answer a single question, heading straight for the entrance. Then I saw Bai Jiqing. She stood at the entrance in a bright red gown, surrounded by a group of socialites. The moment she saw me, her smile stiffened for a split second before she masked it. "Oh," she raised her voice, making sure everyone around could hear, "Isn't this Shen Musi? I heard you went to France to study. Why are you back so soon?" I stopped and looked at her. "Oh, I forgot," she giggled, covering her mouth with a hand, her voice sickly sweet. "Are you back to get married? Did you find a replacement that quickly?" The surrounding socialites laughed along, their eyes filled with anticipation for the drama. Just as I was about to speak, a voice came from behind me. "Who said anything about a replacement?" Zhu Minglan, dressed in a dark green qipao with a shawl draped over her arm, walked out of the ballroom. She was well preserved, in her 50s. She looked barely 40, with features that were 70% identical to Fu Shizhou's. She walked up to me and naturally linked her arm with mine. "Mom," I stammered, the word slipping out instinctively. Zhu Minglan glanced at me and smiled. "That has a nice ring to it." Then she turned to Bai Jiqing. Her smile remained, but her eyes turned cold. "Miss Bai, who were you saying was a replacement?" Bai Jiqing's smile vanished completely. Auntie Zhu, I didn't mean it like that." "Then what did you mean?" Zhu Minglan's tone wasn't heavy, but every word hit like a nail. "My daughter-in-law flew back from Paris specifically for this gala, and here you are making snide remarks. Is this how the Bai family raises their children?" The socialites nearby went silent instantly, all of them bowing their heads and pretending to check their phones. Bai Jiqing's face turned bright red. "Auntie Zhu, there's just been a misunderstanding between Miss Shen and me." "A misunderstanding?" Zhu Minglan laughed. "Miss Bai, the day you got engaged to Jiu Nanfeng was the day my son proposed in Paris. You snatched up my daughter-in-law's ex-boyfriend, and she turned around and found someone far better. What is there to misunderstand?" Bai Jiqing opened her mouth but found no words. Zhu Minglan patted my hand. "Come Musi, I'll introduce you to some people." She led me into the ballroom, leaving behind a wake of stunned socialites and reporters. "Auntie," I whispered, "thank you. For what?" She glanced at me. "I've never liked that Bai girl. Besides, Shizhou has liked you for 3 years. Do you think I didn't know?" But what?" She interrupted. "You think I'm helping you just because you're marrying Shizhou Shen Musi? Let me tell you, I'm a good judge of character. You're capable, you're smart, and you aren't the type of woman who relies on men to climb the ladder. Shizhou is the lucky one to have found you." I was stunned. "But there is one thing." She stopped and looked at me seriously. "You can't marry Shizhou just to get back at that man named Jiu. I'm not." "I know you aren't." She patted my hand. "If you were only out for revenge, you wouldn't have waited this long. Enough of that. Come, let me introduce you to some friends." Throughout the gala, Zhu Minglan kept her arm linked with mine, introducing me to every prominent family in the city. Her introduction was simple. "This is my daughter-in-law Shen Musi. She's an aerospace materials engineer, very talented. Not Fu Shizhou's fiancée, not the Fu family's daughter-in-law, but simply Shen Musi, aerospace materials engineer." In that moment, I suddenly felt that marrying Fu Shizhou might be more than just a partnership. Halfway through the gala, I went to the restroom to touch up my makeup. When I came out, someone was standing in the hallway. Jiu Nanfeng. He was leaning against the wall, holding a glass of untouched red wine. His tie was loosened and he looked worlds apart from the polished CEO in the ballroom. "Shen Musi," he spoke, his voice hoarse. "Are you satisfied now?" I stopped, keeping a 3-meter distance from him. "Satisfied with what?" "You got the Bais to pull their investment. You made a fool of me at the negotiation table, and now you've made my fiancé lose face in front of everyone. He stared at me, his eyes bloodshot. Does this make you feel powerful, Jiu Nanfeng? My voice was calm. The buys pulled out because your project is flawed, not because of me. You were humiliated at the table because you used substandard materials, not because of me. And your fiancée lost face because she couldn't keep her mouth shut, not because of me. You're pinning all the blame on me because you're too cowardly to face the truth. You brought all of this on yourself. He snapped his head up to look at me, his eyes rimmed with red. Shenmusi, what exactly do you want? Money, shares, or do you just want to see me on my knees begging you? I looked at him. This man I once thought I'd spend my life with. 3 years ago he came back from a business trip with a bouquet of flowers and said, Musi, once I'm done with this busy spell, I'll marry you. 2 years ago he took me to see apartments and asked, Musi, which layout do you prefer? A year ago he started working late constantly and stepping away to take calls. When I asked him what was wrong, he'd say, it's company business, you wouldn't understand. The truth was I understood everything, I just didn't want to admit it. Jiu Nanfeng, I said, I don't want your money and I don't want your shares. What I want is for you to give back every single second of the 7 years you owe me. He froze. But you can't give them back, I said, turning away. So, I'll take what's mine in my own way. Shenmusi, he shouted behind me. You think Fu Shizhou actually likes you? He's just using you to get to me. I stopped and looked back at him. Jiu Nanfeng, do you know what your biggest problem is? I asked. It's not your selfishness or your cold-heartedness, it's that you simply don't believe anyone can be genuinely good to another person. You think everyone is calculating, so you calculate against everyone. But Fu Shizhou is different. He pursued me for 3 years, and I rejected him for 3 years. He could have kicked you while you were down, but he didn't. Everything he's done, he did because I asked. I looked Jiu Nanfeng in the eye. You will never understand what that's called. I turned and walked away. At the end of the hallway, Zhu Minglan stood holding a cup of tea. Finished talking? She asked. Finished. Then let's head back, she said, taking my arm. The auction is about to start. Oh, and Shizhou just called. He's flying back tomorrow. What's he coming back for? For the wedding dress fitting, of course. She smiled. Aren't you two getting married in a week? I blinked. 1 week. It had been 1 week since I accepted Fu Shizhou's proposal, and in 1 week I would be his wife. 3 days after the charity gala, Beijing saw its first snowfall of the winter. I was in my office at the top of the Fu Group building, processing documents, when Song Yi knocked and entered. President Shen, Jiu Nanfeng is here. He's asking to see you. He's waiting alone in the lobby downstairs. I'm not seeing him, he said. If you don't see him, he'll leak the Dingsheng Metals situation to the press. If the Maple Leaf Group stock crashes, your 5% stake will be worthless. I set down my pen and considered this. Send him up. 10 minutes later, Jiu Nanfeng pushed the door open. He looked even more haggard than he had 3 days ago. He was wearing the same bespoke suit, but the collar was rumpled, and he hadn't shaved. The dark circles under his eyes looked like bruises. Sit, I said, pointing to the chair opposite me. He didn't sit. Instead, he leaned over my desk, bracing his hands on the surface and looking down at me. Shenmusi, I'm begging you. I looked up at him. I'll give you whatever you want. His voice was trembling. Money, shares, real estate, cars, just name it. As long as you stop this. Stop what? Get the buys to reinvest in the hotel project and destroy that inspection report, he said, emphasizing every word. Give me a price. I leaned back in my chair watching him. Jiu Nanfeng, do you really think money can solve this? Everything can be solved with money. His gaze turned cold. Including your 7 years. I laughed. Fine. I stood up and walked to the window, my back to him. Then here's my price. Tell me. First, Maple Leaf Group must publish a public apology on its official website and across 3 major media outlets. You will admit to cheating on me with Bai Jiqing while we were together, and admit that you chose our engagement date specifically to force me out of the picture. Silence hung in the air for 3 seconds. Second, you will compensate me for 7 years of my youth. Nothing crazy, just the amount you saved by cutting corners on the hotel project, 32 million. Third, you will withdraw from every aerospace material-related project invested in by the Maple Leaf Group. Those projects rely on my expertise. You have no right to touch them. I turned around to face him. Agree to these 3 conditions, and I'll give you the inspection report. We'll go our separate ways if you refuse. I held up the USB drive. This report will be on the desk of the Securities Regulatory Commission by tomorrow morning. Jiu Nanfeng's face went white as a sheet. 32 million, he rasped. Do you realize that is exactly the amount of liquid capital Maple Leaf has left? I know, I nodded. So think carefully, if you give me that money, your hotel project is officially dead. His hands were shaking. You did this on purpose. Yes, I said, setting the USB drive back on the desk. I did. Gu Nanfeng stared at the drive as if it were his death warrant. Shen Musi, you've changed, he said. You weren't like this before. And what was I like before? I countered. The old me would cook noodles for you when you worked late, drive to pick you up when you were drunk at a banquet, and take 3 months of leave to care for your mother in the hospital. I did those things because I thought you were worth it. But now I know. I looked at him squarely. You aren't. Gu Nanfeng's eyes brimmed with tears. Musi, don't call me that. I cut him off. It's Miss Shin. He took a deep breath and closed his eyes. When he opened them, they were bloodshot. Fine, Miss Shin, I accept your terms. Excellent. I pulled a document from my drawer and slid it toward him. Sign here. He glanced at it, his expression darkening further. You had this ready. From the moment you walked through that door, I knew you'd say yes, I said, leaning back. Because you have no other choice. His hand shook violently as he signed his name in a jagged scrawl. Once the last document was signed, he slammed the pen onto the desk and stood up. Shen Musi, you're going to regret this. You've said that already. I picked up the signed papers and checked them. Last time you said it, I ended up marrying Fu Shizhou. What will I get this time? He turned to leave. Wait, I called out. One more thing. What? You mentioned leaking the Dingxing Metals story to the press. I smiled. Go ahead, Dingxing's legal representative is Zhao Yuan, your assistant. If you leak it, you're the first one who goes down. Gu Nanfeng's face turned absolutely livid. You, don't let the door hit you on the way out. He slammed the door as he left. The second the door closed, my phone rang. It was Fu Shizhou. Finished talking. He asked, how did you know? Song Yi told me. His voice was steady. Are you alright? I'm fine. Good. He paused. Shen Musi, I'm flying back tomorrow, fitting on the day after, wedding the day after that. I know. Are you nervous? I looked out the window at the falling snow and gave a small laugh. Not at all. If I'm not afraid of Gu Nanfeng anymore, why would I be afraid of marrying you? There was a 2-second silence on the other end, and then Fu Shizhou laughed, a low, resonant sound like the vibration of a cello string. That's good, Shen Musi, wait for me. I will. After hanging up, I stood by the window watching the heavy traffic on Financial Street. Now that Gu Nanfeng had signed, the moment that 32 million hit my account, Maple Leaf's capital chain would snap. The buys would pull out immediately, the stock would plummet, and the board would revolt. He was going to lose everything, and I was going to be Fu Shizhou's wife. Outside, the snow was falling harder. The bridal atelier in Beijing was tucked away in a private villa near Wangfujing. It had no sign, yet every high society bride in the city came here. Fu Shizhou had booked the appointment a month in advance. The lead designer had flown in from Milan with 3 assistants, displaying a row of wedding dresses in the studio. I stood in the fitting room looking at my reflection in a white gown, feeling a brief moment of daze. It was a mermaid-cut dress with hand-embroidered lace on the bodice and hundreds of tiny diamonds sewn into the skirt, shimmering like the Milky Way under the lights. The designer spoke in broken Mandarin at my side. Mrs. Fu, Mr. Fu designed this dress himself, he said. He wanted you to shine like the stars. He designed this. Yes. The designer smiled. Mr. Fu worked on the sketches for 3 months and went through over a dozen versions. He handpicked every single diamond on this skirt. I looked down at the diamonds and suddenly my eyes felt a bit stingy. Shen Musi, a voice came from behind me. I turned to see Bai Jiqing standing at the doorway of the fitting room. She was wearing a white cashmere coat and carrying a Hermes bag. Her expression was complex, jealousy, resentment, and something else I couldn't quite place. Miss Bai, I said to the designer, could you give us a moment? The designer took the hint and stepped out. Closing the door, Bai Jiqing walked in, circling me once before stopping in front of me. The dress is beautiful. Thank you. More beautiful than my engagement dress. Her lip curled slightly. Fu Shizhou treats you better than Gu Nanfeng ever treated me. I didn't say anything. Shen Musi, I didn't come here to pick a fight. She sat on the nearby sofa, resting her bag on her knees. I came to tell you something. What is it? Gu Nanfeng is finished. I watched her. My father officially notified him yesterday that Bai Real Estate is pulling out, the hotel project is dead, the bank loans are due, and Maple Leaf stock dropped 40% today. She looked down, her voice soft. He drank all night last night, shouting your name at his phone. Miss Bai, I'm not blaming you. She looked up, her eyes red. I'm here to thank you. Thank me. If it weren't for you, I might have actually married him. She gave a bitter smile. My father wanted me to marry him for Maple Leaf's business reach, but you know what, I actually liked him. I watched her in silence. But last night when he was drunk, he kept calling your name. He said, Musi, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have treated you like that. He said it for an hour straight. Bai Jiqing's tears began to fall. That was the moment I realized he never had a place for me in his heart. I didn't know what to say, so thank you. She stood up and wiped her tears. Thank you for letting me see the truth before I married him. She walked to the door and looked back at me one last time. Shen Musi, you're luckier than I am. Fu Shizhou really loves you. The door closed. I stood before the mirror again, looking at myself in the gown. Fu Shizhou really loves me, coming from Bai Jiqing. Those words carried more weight than they would from anyone else. When I finished the fitting and stepped outside, Fu Shizhou's car was waiting. He was leaning against the door in a black overcoat, holding a cup of hot coffee. When he saw me, he smiled. How was it? How was what? The dress. It was okay. Okay. He arched an eyebrow. I spent 3 months designing it and all I get is okay. I looked at him and suddenly I really wanted to ask him something. Fu Shizhou, when exactly did you start designing that dress? He froze for a second, then looked away, his ears turning slightly red. Well, the night you accepted my proposal. That night, weren't you in Paris? I was, he said, rubbing his nose. I drew it in my hotel room. Fu Shizhou, I said, walking over and taking the coffee from his hand. You really are a closet romantic, aren't you? He smiled, his eyes crinkling at the corners, exactly the same way they did back in university. Get in the car, he said, holding the door open. I want to show you somewhere. Where are we going? Our home. You haven't seen it yet, have you? After a 20-minute drive, we pulled up to a high-end complex near the financial district. The elevator went straight to the top floor, opening into a duplex penthouse with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the entire Beijing skyline. The place was massive, decorated in a sleek modern style dominated by black, white, and gray, but on the living room wall hung a painting, or rather a framed structural diagram, of an aviation material. Is this the diagram from your first published paper? Fu Shizhou said, standing behind me. It took me a long time to track down the original. I turned to look at him. Fu Shizhou, how long have you? Sure, he said, placing a finger to his lips. Don't ask me why. Just know that I've been preparing all of this for a very long time. How long? Since the day you rejected me. I went silent. He stepped closer, looking down at me. Shen Musi, I know you married me because of Gu Nanfeng. I don't care. His voice was soft. I have all the time in the world to wait for his shadow to fade from your heart. Fu Shizhou, you don't have to answer me now. He took a step back. Come on, let me show you the kitchen. You love cooking, right? I had a Chinese-style kitchen custom designed for you. I followed him inside and saw the stove, the vent hood, the spice rack. Everything was arranged exactly the way I liked it. How did you know I wanted a kitchen like this? Back in university, you posted on social media saying, my future home must have a great kitchen. That was 8 years ago. I scrolled back, he said, his expression unchanged. I've gone through every single post you've ever made. Looking at him, I suddenly felt a chill, not out of fear, but out of realization. Just when I thought I had locked every door to my heart, I found out he had every single key. Fu Shizhou, I asked, aren't you afraid I'll never forget him? He looked at me, pausing for 3 seconds. No, he said. Because I'm going to show you that you deserve so much better. His phone rang. It was Songyi. President Fu Gu Nanfeng is here. He's at the gate, demanding to see Ms. Shin. Fu Shizhou glanced at me. Let him up. Are you sure? I frowned. Let him see. Fu Shizhou said. Let him see where you live, whose wedding dress you're wearing, and whose wife you're about to become. 5 minutes later, the doorbell rang. Fu Shizhou answered it. Gu Nanfeng stood at the door, covered in snow, his coat drenched. He was pale, his eyes bloodshot and swollen, looking as if he hadn't slept in days. Shen Musi, he rasped from the entryway. I'm begging you, stop this. Gu Nanfeng, the bank is seizing the building tomorrow. The shareholders are demanding my resignation. Every project has stalled since the Bai family pulled their funding. His voice trembled. I have nothing left. You did this to yourself. I said, I know. He suddenly dropped to his knees. It's my fault, but please give me a break. I'll pay back the 32 million even if I have to sell everything I own. Just stop backing me into a corner. Fu Shizhou frowned and reached out to pull him up. Jiyu Nanfeng, stand up and speak like a man. Jiyu Nanfeng shoved his hand away and crawled forward a few steps, looking up at me. Shen Musi, we were together for 7 years. 7 years, you can't do this to me. I knelt down so we were eye to level. You say I can't do this to you, Jiyu Nanfeng, then let me ask you, when you chose to get engaged on the very day I left the country, did you think about whether you could do that to me? He froze. When you sent Zhao Yuan to Paris to spy on me, did you think about whether you could do that to me? When you stood at the negotiating table and claimed my report was a forgery, did you think about whether you could do that to me? Tears began to stream down his face. You never thought about it, Jiyu Nanfeng, because you didn't think I mattered. You thought I was the kind of woman who would just disappear quietly. After being dumped, I stood up and looked down at him. But she isn't, Fu Shizhou added coldly from my side, and that's why you lost. Jiyu Nanfeng remained on the floor, his shoulders shaking. Leave, Fu Shizhou said, opening the door. If you don't go now, I'm calling security. Jiyu Nanfeng slowly stood up, stumbling and leaning against the wall for support. He gave me one last look, a look filled with regret, resentment, and the sight of a man who had been completely broken. The door clicked shut. The room stayed silent for a long time. Shen Musi, Fu Shizhou finally spoke. Are you okay? I stood by the window watching Jiyu Nanfeng's silhouette stagger out of the complex below. I'm fine, I said, better than I've ever been. The Maple Leaf Group annual shareholders meeting, Beijing International Convention Center. This was one of the biggest events in the city's business world this year. Maple Leaf stock had plummeted 40%, the Bai family had withdrawn their capital, banks were calling in loans and shareholders were revolting. On today's agenda was one critical item, the removal of the current CEO, Jiyu Nanfeng. I wore a deep blue professional suit, my hair pinned up. Sporting the engagement ring Fu Shizhou gave me, a 3-carat blue diamond that sparkled coldly under the lights. Fu Shizhou walked beside me in a black suit, radiating authority. Nervous, he whispered. No, I replied. I've been preparing for this for 3 months. The hall was packed with shareholders, board members, executives, and a swarm of reporters. Jiyu Nanfeng sat on the dais in a white shirt. No tie, he looked terrible, gaunt, with cracked lips and dark circles under his eyes. Yet he maintained a shred of dignity as he spoke into the microphone. Dear shareholders, welcome to the annual meeting. Today's agenda. Before we begin, I stood up from my seat. I have a formal motion. Every eye in the room turned to me. Jiyu Nanfeng's hand tightened around his microphone. Ms. Shen Musi, the moderator said, sounding nervous. What is your motion? I move for the immediate removal of Jiyu Nanfeng as CEO of Maple Leaf Group. The room exploded, camera flashes went off like lightning, and the roar of hushed whispers swept through the crowd. Jiyu Nanfeng turned white as a sheet. On what grounds? The moderator asked. I pulled a document from my bag and held it up. On 3 grounds. First, gross negligence during his tenure as CEO resulting in major safety hazards in the company's core projects. I projected the document onto the screen. It was the material test report. The structural steel used in the new Maple Leaf Hotel project has a tensile strength 22% below national standards and a yield strength 18% below. Do you know what that means? It means if an earthquake hits, that building will collapse in 3 seconds. The room went deathly silent. Second, I switched to the next document. Jiyu Nanfeng embezzled 32 million from company funds for personal use, specifically as a bride price paid to buy real estate. Bank transfer records appeared on the screen, clear as day, bearing Jiyu Nanfeng's signature and Zhao Yuan's processing notes. Jiyu Nanfeng's lips began to tremble. Third, I displayed the final document. Jiyu Nanfeng, knowing the materials were substandard, instructed his subordinates to forge test reports to deceive the board and investors. A screenshot of an email appeared. Sender, Jiyu Nanfeng, recipient, Zhao Yuan. Content, 1 sentence. Keep an eye on the Dingxing matter, don't let the board find out. The silence in the hall was so heavy you could hear the hum of the air conditioning. I set the documents down and looked directly at Jiyu Nanfeng. Any one of these points is sufficient for removal. Taken together, Jiyu Nanfeng is not only unfit to lead this company, he should be held legally accountable. I second the motion. Fu Shizhou stood up. His voice wasn't loud, but every word carried weight. As the largest shareholder of Maple Leaf Group, the Fu Group supports the motion to remove Jiyu Nanfeng as CEO. Jiyu Nanfeng bolted upright. Fu Shizhou, you, Mr. Gu, Fu Shizhou said flatly, you can speak after the vote is over. The voting began. The result was a foregone conclusion. 78% of the shareholders voted in favor. Gu Nanfeng was out. He stood on the stage, hands braced against the table, head bowed, his shoulders shaking violently. The moderator announced, based on the results, Mr. Gu Nanfeng is hereby removed from his position as CEO effective immediately. I gathered my files ready to leave. Shen Musi, Bai Jiqing stood up from the gallery, her face contorted with rage. You think you've won, she screamed, rushing toward me. You've destroyed a man, you've ruined everything he had. Ms. Bai. I looked at her calmly. I didn't destroy him, he destroyed himself. If he hadn't used substandard materials, the Bai family wouldn't have pulled out if he hadn't embezzled funds. The banks wouldn't be breathing down his neck if he hadn't lied to the shareholders. He wouldn't have been fired today. I emphasized every word. Every bit of this was his own choice. Tears started falling down by Jiqing's face. But you shouldn't have, not like this. Then how should I have done it? I countered. Should I have disappeared quietly? Should I have stayed in Paris crying while he married you? Should I have played the bigger person and said I wish you both the best? She opened her mouth but no words came out. Ms. Bai. My voice softened. You should be grateful that you saw his true colors before you married him, otherwise the person standing here crying today would have been you. I turned and walked away. Behind me I heard Bai Jiqing's sobs and the frantic clicking of the reporters' cameras outside the hall. Fu Shizhou was leaning against the wall waiting for me. Is it over? He asked. It's over. Are you happy? I thought about it for a moment. I'm not happy, I said. But I do feel vindicated. He smiled. Then that is being happy. We walked toward the elevator side by side. Shen Musi, he said, pressing the button. What do you plan to do next? Go back to my research, I replied. My project has been delayed for far too long. All right, he nodded. And what about me? What about you? Now that you're marrying me, what am I to you? Your partner, your ally, or... The elevator doors slid open. I stepped inside and turned to face him. Fu Shizhou, have you ever considered a certain question? What is it? Why did I choose to marry you before the shareholders' meeting? He froze for a second. Because, I said, looking him in the eye, if I only wanted revenge on Gu Nanfeng, I wouldn't have needed to marry you at all. The report in my hands was more than enough to send him to prison. Then why did you? Because I didn't accept your proposal just for revenge. I pressed the button to close the doors. I'll answer that question once I'm done with my research. Shen Musi. He reached out to block the doors. Make yourself clear. President Fu. Song Yi came running from the end of the hallway. People from the procuratorate are here. They're looking for Gu Nanfeng. Fu Shizhou frowned. This fast? Based on the evidence President Shen submitted earlier, the procuratorate has already filed a case. Fu Shizhou turned back to me, his gaze complex. You reported him? Yes. I pressed the button again. He embezzled company funds and faked lab reports. That's a criminal offense. It's not a matter of whether I report him or not, it's a matter of him facing the consequences he deserves. The doors slowly closed. My last glimpse was of Fu Shizhou standing in the hallway, a slow smirk spreading across his face. A generic cafe in Beijing. This was the meeting spot Gu Nanfeng had chosen, no longer one of those high-end private clubs we used to frequent, but a common chain cafe at the entrance of a residential complex. When I arrived, he was already sitting in the corner. He wore a grey sweater under an old down jacket, looking like a completely different person from the suit-clad President Gu of the past. His hair was a mess, he had stubble on his chin and a cup of Americano. Now cold, sat untouched before him. I sat down across from him. You came. He looked up, his eyes dull. What did you want to see me about? One last meeting. He gave a bitter laugh. The procuratorate wants to talk to me tomorrow. My lawyer says there's a high probability I'm going away. I remained silent. Shen Musi, he said, looking at me. Did you know I dream about you every single night now? What do you dream about? I dream about you cooking noodles for me. His voice was soft. That year I came home at 3:00 a.m. after overtime. You were in the kitchen making me a bowl, tomato, and egg noodles. You put in extra vinegar because you knew I liked it sour. My fingers tightened involuntarily. I also dream about you driving to pick me up. He continued. I was drunk and making a mess in the KTV restroom. You hauled me into the car all by yourself, cleaned me up and took me home. The next day, you called out of work saying you felt unwell, but you were actually taking care of me all day. Ji Nanfeng, let me finish, he cut me off. I even dream about you staying by my mother's hospital bed for 3 months. The day she passed, you were more devastated than I was. You cried for an entire hour until your eyes were as swollen as walnuts. His tears began to fall. Shenmusi, I'm sorry I failed you. I looked at the man before me, the man I once thought I would spend the rest of my life with. 7 years ago when he was courting me, he would wait for me under the lab building with a cup of hot milk tea. 5 years ago during his startup phase, he'd call me after my overtime shift to say, Musi, I signed another big contract today. 3 years ago when his mother passed away, he held me and cried for half an hour outside the funeral home. But this was also the man who chose to betray me when I needed him most. Ji Nanfeng, I began. Do you know why I still came to see you today? He shook his head. Because I wanted to tell you something in person. What? I have another piece of evidence, recordings and bank transfers proving you bribed officials in the quality inspection department. His face went white instantly. I haven't handed this over to the procuratorate yet. I looked him in the eyes. But I'm here today to tell you I won't go soft just because of your tears. Shenmusi, the 7 years you owe me can't be paid back with a bowl of noodles, a few car rides, or 3 months at a bedside. My voice was calm. You chose betrayal, now you must face the consequences. His hands were shaking. I came today so you would know everything you lost wasn't because I was too ruthless, but because you were too greedy. You were greedy for the Bai family's money, so you chose her. You were greedy for project profits, so you used substandard materials. You were greedy for the CEO position, so you deceived every shareholder. I stood up. Ji Nanfeng, you chose wrong from the very beginning. Shenmusi, he bolted upright, his chair hitting the floor with a loud thud. Everyone in the cafe turned to look. I'm begging you. His tears were streaming uncontrollably. Give me a way out. If the bribery charge gets out, I'm looking at least 5 years. Then you should have thought about that before you offered the bribe. Musi, call me MS Shin. He closed his eyes, tears sliding down his face. MS Shin, he rasped. Please. I pulled a tissue from my bag and placed it on the table. Ji Nanfeng, this is the last time I will see you. I turned and walked away. As I reached the door, his phone rang. I heard the voice on the other end. It was the procuratorate. Mr. Ji Nanfeng, please report to the Economic Crimes Investigation Department of the Municipal Procuratorate tomorrow at 9:00 a.m. for questioning. His phone slipped from his hand, shattering on the floor. I pushed open the cafe door, and the cold wind hit my face. Fu Shizhou's car was parked at the curb. He was leaning against the door, holding a cup of hot coffee. All done, all done. How was he? He cried. Fu Shizhou was silent for a moment. Did you lose your nerve? I thought about it. No, I said. But I didn't feel particularly happy either. Then what does it feel like? It's like, I looked up at the falling snow, like pulling a rotten tooth. It hurts like hell at first, but you know it'll never ache again. Fu Shizhou handed me the coffee. Let's go home. Where to? To our home. I got into the car and he walked around to the driver's side to start the engine. As we pulled out of the parking lot, I glanced back at the cafe window. Ji Nanfeng was still sitting there, head bowed, shoulders shaking. The snow outside grew heavier, quickly blurring his silhouette. My phone buzzed with a news notification. Ji Nanfeng, former CEO of Maple Leaf Group, is under investigation by the Municipal Procuratorate for suspected embezzlement, bribery, and falsifying inspection reports. I turned off my phone and leaned back into the seat. Fu Shizhou glanced at me. Tired? Yeah, sleep for a bit. I'll wake you when we get there. I closed my eyes as the car drove smoothly through the snow with the heater blowing softly. One thought crossed my mind before I drifted off. There were only 3 days left until my wedding with Fu Shizhou, the Fu family's private island, South Pacific. The wedding was held in a cliffside chapel. The structure was entirely glass. Surrounded by the ocean on all sides, sunlight poured through the glass dome, making the entire space look crystal clear. The guest list was small, just the 2 families and their closest friends. However, every single person in attendance was from Beijing's top elite. Reporters were restricted to small boats off the coast, their long-range lenses aimed at the chapel. I was wearing a white wedding dress, the one Fu Shizhou had designed. The tiny diamonds on the train refracted the sunlight into a spectrum of colors, making it look as though I were wearing a rainbow. Ju Minglan helped me adjust my veil, her eyes turning red. Auntie, call me Mom. Mom, I said, feeling a bit shy. She smiled and patted my hand. Go on, Shizhou has been waiting a long time." The chapel doors opened, and the pipe organ began to play. I walked down the white marble aisle. Lin Wei was in the third row sobbing her heart out, while Sister Ju handed her tissues. Fu Shizhou stood at the altar in a white suit, holding a ring as he watched me walk toward him. A small smile played on his lips, though his eyes were glistening. I reached him and we stood face to face. The priest began the vows. "Shen Musi, do you take Fu Shizhou to be your husband, to have and to hold, for richer or for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love, honor and cherish, until death do you part?" I was just about to speak. The chapel doors were slammed open. "Wait." Everyone turned around. Jiyu Nanfeng stood at the entrance. He was wearing a rumpled shirt, his hair windswept and chaotic. On his wrist was a pair of handcuffs, well, half a pair. The other end was being gripped by 2 judicial police officers. "Jiyu Nanfeng." Fu Shizhou frowned. "How did you?" "I'm here for an explanation." Jiyu Nanfeng's voice was hoarse, as if all the life had been drained out of him. "Shen Musi, you ruined everything I had. Now you're here getting married in such glory. Do you think that's fair?" The chapel erupted into an uproar. One of the officers said awkwardly, "Mr. Fu, our apologies." He broke away suddenly during the transfer. "Let him speak." Fu Shizhou interrupted, his voice cold. Jiyu Nanfeng stumbled forward a few steps, the police dragging behind him, the handcuffs making a harsh metallic clinking sound. "Shen Musi." He looked at me, his eyes as bloodshot as a rabbit's. "You left me with nothing. The company is gone, the money is gone, the Bai family called off the engagement, and I'm going to prison. Are you satisfied now?" The chapel fell so silent you could hear the waves crashing against the shore. Every gaze was fixed on me. I turned around to face him. "Jiyu Nanfeng, you say I left you with nothing. Let me ask you this. When you chose to get engaged on the very day I left the country, what exactly did you expect from me?" He froze. "You wanted me to disappear quietly and not disturb your new life. I did that. I didn't make a scene, I didn't cry, and I didn't post a single complaint on social media. But what about you? You sent Zhao Yuan to stalk me in Paris. You slandered me for forging reports at the negotiation table. And you let your fiancé humiliate me in public at the banquet." Jiyu Nanfeng, who exactly was the one who refused to let go, his lips trembled. "You say I ruined everything you had, but look at your company, your money and your fiancé. Which of those things did you actually earn yourself? Your father gave you the company, you scammed people for the money, and you traded a marriage alliance for that fiancé. You never truly owned any of it, which is why you lost it all overnight. As for me," I looked him dead in the eye, "everything I have I earned, my degree, my patents, my career, those are things no one can ever take away from me. So," I said, emphasizing every word, "you have no right to stand there and claim that I ruined you." Jiyu Nanfeng's face went as white as a sheet. The officer tugged at the handcuffs. "Jiyu Nanfeng, come back with us." "Wait." Fu Shizhou suddenly spoke up. He walked to the side of the altar and pressed a button on the wall. Large screens on both sides of the chapel lit up, and a recording began to play. It was Jiyu Nanfeng's voice. "Zhao Yuan, keep an eye on the Bai family. Don't let Jiqing find out about Shen Musi." "Understood, President Jiyu. How should we handle Ms. Shen?" "She's going to France to study." "That's perfect. Order a bouquet of flowers for the airport and write wishing you a bright future. Keep it classy. And what about Ms. Shen's things in the apartment? Throw them out. Don't let her come looking for me again." The recording ended, leaving the chapel in a dead, heavy silence. Jiyu Nanfeng's face turned from a pale white to a sickly ashen gray. "This recording," Fu Shizhou said, switching off the screen, "is a call log between you and Zhao Yuan from a year ago. Shen Musi didn't know I had this. I tracked it down myself." He walked up to Jiyu Nanfeng, looking down at him with cold disdain. "Jiyu Nanfeng, you claim she ruined your company. Let me tell you this, you ruined 7 years of her devotion. You let her stand alone at the airport while you got engaged. You sent Zhao Yuan to stalk her in Paris. You claimed her reports were forged at the negotiation table. A building in exchange for 7 years of a person's life. Who do you think lost more?" Jiyu Nanfeng opened his mouth, but not a single word came out. "Take him away." Fu Shizhou directed the officers. The police gripped Jiyu Nanfeng and began dragging him out. He stumbled as he was hauled from the chapel, casting one final look back at me, his eyes filled with nothing but shattered remains. The doors closed. The chapel remained silent for 3 seconds, then Lin Wei began to clap. The applause grew louder and louder until the entire room was cheering. Fu Shizhou walked back to the altar and looked at me. "Sorry for the Interruption, shall we continue? The priest cleared his throat. Shinmusi, do you? I do. I interjected before the priest could finish. Fu Shijo blinked in surprise, then broke into a smile. Fu Shijo, the priest said, suppressing a grin. Do you take Shinmusi? I do, he answered immediately. The guests erupted in laughter. The priest shook his head helplessly and picked up the pace. I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may exchange rings. Fu Shijo took the ring and held my hand. His grip was steady, but I could feel his fingertips trembling slightly as he slid the ring onto my finger. He whispered something so softly that only I could hear. Shinmusi, thank you for choosing today. I looked up at him. Choosing what? Choosing me. His eyes were rimmed with red. Not because you needed someone to help you get revenge, but because you truly wanted to marry me. I didn't say anything. Instead, I stood on my tiptoes and whispered into his ear. I told you I didn't accept your proposal just for revenge. Then why? Because you waited for me for 3 years and I didn't want to make you wait any longer. A tear escaped his eye, glistening like a diamond in the sunlight. The guests began to applaud again, and Lin Wei's sobbing was the loudest of all. Fu Shijo leaned down and kissed me. A sea breeze drifted through the gaps in the glass, smelling of salt. In the distance, the reporters' boats lined the horizon, their camera flashes flickering like stars. By tomorrow, this wedding would be the headline of every news outlet in Beijing, and Jiyu Nanfeng would see those headlines from inside a detention center. This, I thought, was perhaps the best possible ending. 3 days after the wedding, on the rooftop terrace of our new home, winter in Beijing was freezing, but the terrace was equipped with floor heating, and the glass railings blocked the wind, leaving the space bathed in warm sunlight. I sat in a rattan chair with a pile of documents spread out before me, not from Maple Leaf Group but my PhD dissertation proposal. Fu Shijo walked over with a cup of tea and sat across from me. You've been looking at that since we got back yesterday, aren't you tired? Not at all, I replied without looking up. This is my research. It's far more interesting than dealing with Jiyu Nanfeng. He chuckled. Of course. You're working on aerospace materials, you're building planes. A man like Jiyu Nanfeng is just a builder of houses. I looked up at him. Are you looking down on builders? I'm looking down on Jiyu Nanfeng, he corrected me. Other builders shouldn't have to take the fall for him. I shook my head with a smile and returned to my papers. Shinmusi, he said, setting down his tea. I have something to ask you. What is it? At the wedding you said you didn't marry me just for revenge. What was the real reason? I set my documents down and looked at him. Do you really want to know? I've been thinking about it for 3 days, he said earnestly. I can't figure it out. I leaned back in my chair, reflecting. Fu Shijo, do you remember our junior year when I entered the National Undergraduate Materials Science Competition? I remember you won the gold medal. Do you remember that it was pouring rain that day and my car broke down halfway there? He paused. I called Jiyu Nanfeng that day. He said he was in a meeting and didn't have time to pick me up, I said calmly. So I called you. Yes, I called you without a second thought. You drove from campus to get me and dropped me off at the venue. You were soaked to the bone when we arrived. But the first thing you said was, hurry and get to your competition, don't worry about me. Fu Shijo went silent. I won the gold that day during the awards ceremony. I looked everywhere for you but you were gone. I only found out later that you spent 2 hours in the parking lot changing a tire. Your own car had blown a tire on the way to get me. How did you know that? He frowned. Your roommate told me. I looked at him. He said when you got back you were covered in mud and your hands were scraped raw from changing the tire, but you never mentioned it to anyone. Shinmusi, you pursued me for 3 years and did so much for me, but you never spoke of it, I said, my voice turning slightly thick. You saved seats for me, bought me meals, fixed my computer, and helped me move dorms every time I needed help. You were there. But Jiyu Nanfeng was different. He helped me too, but he made sure I knew about every single thing he did. He would say, Musi, I took a detour just to pick you up, or Musi, I cancelled a meeting to be with you. He wasn't helping me, he was making me feel indebted to him. Fu Shijo's expression was complex. So, I agreed to marry you, I said, looking him in the eye, not for revenge but because you are the only person in this world who is good to me without keeping score. The terrace fell quiet for a long time. The sunlight hit his face and I saw his eyes glisten. Shinmusi, his voice was raspy. Do you have any idea how long I've waited to hear those words? 3 years, since freshman orientation, the day you got heatstroke and I carried you to the infirmary. He laughed softly. 7 years. I was stunned. Freshman orientation, but wasn't that Yes, that was the day before you met Jiu Nanfeng for the first time. He looked down at the tea leaves floating in his cup. So you see, I lost at the starting line, Fu Shizhou. But it doesn't matter, he looked up, his eyes bright. I won at the finish line. My nose stung with a sudden surge of emotion. This man had truly waited for 7 years. My phone rang. It was a number from the research institute. I picked it up. Comrade Shen Musi, congratulations. The National Key Project New Aerospace Titanium Alloy Materials has been approved, and you have been appointed as the chief engineer. Please report to Beijing next Monday. I was speechless. Hello, Engineer Shen, are you there? I'm here, I said, my voice trembling. Thank you, I'll be there on time. After hanging up, I looked at Fu Shizhou, tears streaming down my face. What is it? He asked frantically. Who was that? What happened? Nothing. I wiped my tears and smiled. The national project was approved. I'm the chief engineer. He froze for a second, then jumped up so quickly his chair nearly flipped over. Really? He rushed around the table, swept me up into his arms and spun me around the terrace. Shen Musi, you're incredible. Put me down. I won't. He held me tight, his voice muffled against my shoulder. My wife is the chief engineer of a national project. Who cares about Jiu Nanfeng? He isn't fit to carry your shoes. I was dizzy from the spinning, but as I laughed, the tears wouldn't stop. He finally set me down, cupped my face in his hands, and looked at me with total sincerity. Shen Musi, do you know, he said, you are the most remarkable person I've ever met. Not because you got revenge on Jiu Nanfeng and not because you married me, but because, no matter what you went through, you never gave up on your own path. I looked at him, tears flowing. From now on, he said, wiping my cheeks, you handle your research and I'll handle the business. If anyone bullies you, I'll bully them back. If anyone denies you funding, I'll invest. If anyone questions your results, I'll send them a lawyer's letter. Fu Shizhou, I laughed. Are you my husband or my manager? Both, he said matter-of-factly. You're responsible for changing the world. I'm responsible for handing you the tools. Beyond the terrace, the Beijing sky was a brilliant blue. In the distance, a plane cut through the clouds, leaving a long white trail behind it. I looked at that plane and imagined a scene. Perhaps one day, the aerospace materials I developed would be used on the wings of a plane just like that one. A plane flying from Beijing to Paris, to every corner of the globe, and on the ground, there would be someone waiting for me to come home. My phone rang again. This time it was Lin Wei. Musi, did you see the news? Jiu Nanfeng was sentenced 5 years, bribery, embezzlement and falsifying reports, all of it. I glanced at Fu Shizhou. He raised an eyebrow. I saw it. I said, I just saw it. Isn't it satisfying? Tell me it's satisfying. I thought for a moment. Actually no, I said. Why not? Because 5 years is too short. I smiled. Just kidding, Lin Wei, I'm busy. Let's talk later. I hung up and Fu Shizhou looked at me. 5 years, you think it's too short? He ruined people's lives. I said, 5 years is definitely short, but that's the law, Fu Shizhou said. What we can do is make sure his time inside isn't very comfortable. What are you planning? Nothing. He blinked innocently. I just happen to know a few people in the prison administration. I gave him a look. I'm joking. He held up his hands in surrender. I haven't done anything. I didn't believe him for a second, but it didn't matter. The chapter on Jiu Nanfeng was closed. I picked up the dissertation proposal from the table and flipped to the first page. New Aerospace Titanium Alloy Materials. Design and application of high-temperature resistant, high-strength composite structures. Project duration 3 years, funding 80 million. Chief Engineer Shen Musi. I looked at those words, a smile touching my lips. Fu Shizhou. I said, yeah, you were right. About what? My road ahead is still very long. He walked over, stood by my side and looked down at the proposal with me. Yes, he said, and it's going to be very, very bright. The sun shone on the document, illuminating the title Chief Engineer. I took a deep breath and flipped to the next page. A new project, a new beginning. Outside the window, the plane's vapor trail slowly dispersed in the sky like a road extending infinitely into the horizon. The end.